Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and we are in the middle of a very crucial phase in our nation. A lot is happening. One phase we were expecting and hoping that is receding, that relates to COVID-19. But then there are other issues which have resurfaced, and who better to help us navigate the current situation as well as guide us and lead us in understanding as well as defining our role. And she has done a lot as our representative in the Congress from 4th district. That also includes Nassau County. So I take this opportunity with gratefulness to welcome Honorable Kathleen Rice. Namaste, welcome. I'm also delighted that we have entrepreneur and philanthropist Ravi Bhoplapurji joining us. Ravi ji, welcome. Namaste.
Good morning. Namaste.
Yeah. So, first thing first, this is unheard of that what stand president has and the army chief expresses his disagreement with president's stand and talks about him not being a unifier. And we will get into your role about the COVID-19 as we move along. But I found that is something which you should address and help us understand, because it creates a kind of a trust deficit among people as to are they being led with a well coordinated leadership.
So I think the what General Mattis had to say the other day echoed what I think a lot of people are feeling, but coming from him, such a decorated 4-star general who has served this country so admirably, was particularly disturbing. My issue with the language that the president is using right now, and having one of his top cabinet members, Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, have this conversation around the predominantly peaceful protests that are going on around this country is very disturbing, because traditionally any issues of a domestic nature are usually dealt with by the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. And so it's bothersome that the president has chosen the Secretary of Defense to address this issue and to threaten the complete militarization of this country. He wants to, has talked about plans to send the military in unrequested, by force, into cities like New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. And that is a frightening picture for a great democracy like ours. So I strongly condemn the president's language, his threat of military force in this country that's not needed right now.
So how he is articulating the extent of problem and the way he is looking at a solution is of course not in agreement with many people, including you and of course Chief of Army. And I may take this opportunity to bring to the attention of our viewers that it is very important to hear from Congress woman Kathleen Rice. She is a leading Democratic voice on national security issues, and she has also served as a member of the Homeland Security Committee and the top Democrat on the Transportation Security Subcommittee. So this area she knows very well, and she also knows our community very well. And I'll request Ravi Bhoplapurji to say a few words about your personal interaction with her, as well as the way you look up to her being at Nassau County as a leader for us.
Thank you, Ashok ji, and good morning, Honorable Congresswoman. And it is always such a pleasure to know such a wonderful person, so dedicated. She worked as an efficient district attorney, and she brought the crimes all-time low. She kept the entire Nassau County, one of the largest county in the country, such a transparency and prosecuting as well as bringing justice to many of the events and many of the situations. And we were very proud that she quit and she became a congresswoman, and I see a bright future ahead, and the safety and all the good things is going to come, not only in Nassau County, she's going to bring to the entire country, and they're one of the best Democratic congresswomen and we love her. We want to hear her about the COVID situation, and we have been trying to get this interview done for a few weeks, but she played a major role, and I just wanted that her TV interview will help our community to know how strong she's behind the community, our community, entire the community of the American citizens.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Raviji. And Honorable Congresswoman, you have been active voice and a very forceful voice against gun violence, and in that direction, and the kind of I would say lawlessness that we have witnessed in some parts, and at some place, veteran police officer from this community was also shot, and so in general, leaving aside the role of military in controlling, what is it that you would like to offer as an advice to president, or in general, your perception about what should have been done to prevent things like looting of premier stores like Macy's and Apple, etc.?
So I would be remiss if I failed to note that today is Gun Violence Awareness Day. And I think it's a particularly relevant time to be talking about this, given the fact that, you know, we still have too many communities in our country that are beset with gun violence, and we have to address that. But, you know, I think that we have, and look, you know, allowing people to exercise their First Amendment right to free speech and to peacefully protest in our streets is a bedrock of our democracy. And we have to make sure that as elected officials, we allow people, we give them the space to be able to express themselves. When there are people out there, unfortunately, who take advantage of this situation, and they end up doing things like looting stores and breaking windows and taking merchandise, and this is bad, and that has to be stopped, and those people should be punished. In New York, and I know across the city and across, certainly in the city, there has been a curfew set so that you have people off the streets after a certain hour. Now it's 8 p.m. They did that in Washington, D.C. as well. But telling people that you're going to send the military in and treat this country and the people in it as if they are enemy foreign invaders that have to be squashed and stopped is not the right message. And I think, unfortunately, Donald Trump speaks in such divisive terms, as opposed to presidents in the past who have always taken opportunities like this, whether it's the pandemic or the social unrest that's going on right now. Most presidents in the past, if not all, have always taken to go to the public and speak in a unifying way.
And this is a very important year in terms of the democratic process of our country also. And we, as I mentioned, are in a state of flux in terms of reopening and staying towards focus on reopening. There is a gradual reopening which is planned, and from 8 June, New York is also opening up. Ravi Bopalapurji, being at Nassau County, looking at the businesses and their concerns, some additional concerns now due to a sense of uncertainty on security front. How do you look at that, and what would be your expectation from Congresswoman that would assuage some of the fears of business community in Nassau County?
I think, in my opinion, I think the governor is setting up the stage, phase 1 and phase 2 opening. Business are suffering a lot, and people who are unemployment are finally it's coming to a stage where they're getting their checks. At the same time, the SBA, the disbursement was inordinately delayed. I think a congresswoman can oversight these things, what happened, why these small businesses did not get those funds. And I heard through many of my friends say bigger one got the checks within 2 weeks, some didn't get it. I think somehow we had to stabilize because we live here and we want this community to come back to normal. And I believe Congresswoman has done a tremendous job, but I want to hear from her, besides the package 1, package 2, everything coming, how the businesses are going to be helpful, and what other any new initiatives are in place, and what we should be doing and looking at it, and a little bit of an
Absolutely.
input. Thank you.
I appreciate that insight, and Congresswoman, looking at the overall approach towards facing this invisible enemy on the part of federal government, and this stimulation package definitely has helped. Yet there might have been more that you would have wanted to happen on that front, as well as your personal active role, which has been very helpful. I would request you to share some of the initiative that you have also been a part of.
I would love to. So we in the first CARES Act, we stood up what's called the Paycheck Protection Program. And that was funded in the immediate with, I believe it was about $450 billion. And the goal of the PPP program was to get financial relief to small businesses who, because of these shutdown orders across the country, were not legally able to have their businesses open. And what happened in the very beginning, because there was a lack of guidance from Treasury, a lot of the financial institutions that were working with the SBA, the Small Business Administration, to get those loans out the door, they only wanted to deal with clients with whom they had a previous relationship, which made it very difficult for small businesses who were not in that category to actually get in the queue to get money. So every week from the time that we set the PPP up, I was on a call with all my small business owners across Long Island, and I became very aware very quickly about the problems with the PPP process and the program. And so we were able to go down to Washington 2 weeks ago, actually last week, and we passed one bill that was to fix the problems that we saw in the Paycheck Protection Program, whether that was the 75-25 rule of having to spend 75% of the money on your payroll. A lot of small businesses didn't have that expense, so now we changed that to 60-40. We extended the time period that the loans could be paid back from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. And we also allowed people to take advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program and also the Employee Retention Tax Credit, the ERTC, so that one was not mutually exclusive from the other. So that, I think, helped a lot of businesses. But now, as you mentioned, we're in phase 1 of reopening. We're going to quickly get into phase 2. So only certain businesses are open. But as we begin to go through these reopening phases, it's critically important for businesses to take guidance from the CDC in terms of how you can safely reopen your business and be in compliance with whatever state regulations there are. So for instance, if you're a restaurant, how many people you can have, how far away each of your tables need to be, face coverings, gloves, things like that. Because we have to do this reopening right, because we don't want to go back to having, states like New York have to shut down businesses because of the terrible economic impact that has, not just on businesses, but on families and individuals as well.
I appreciate that, and there are so many questions one is grappling with these days, and Raviji, in your presence, I bring to her attention as well as share my concern. We have seen in some stores the attendants were also discharging the responsibility of making people aware to maintain social distance and have masks, and that has resulted into some expressions on the part of some customers, and those are also floating on the social media. So that being one side, and second, so much protests going on with a lot of people gathering together. How concerned you are, Raviji? First you, and then I'll seek Congresswoman's also views on that, because we have always heard that there might be another wave which would hit us. So now that that fear sort of becomes even more intense, Raviji.
I think this is everybody's social obligation and responsibility. And I have seen many of the buildings, many of the locations where I've gone recently. They already put a very planned situation, how people should be, even in elevators, only 4 people, how they can stand, how the elevators should be managed, the doors and everything. But I think all citizens should take this as a serious and follow that until, as Congresswoman says, CDC or health department to make it everything is normal until they announce it. I think we have to do this. Otherwise, if there is any second attack or anything comes, we don't know the unknown enemy, how it's going to affect, hurt us. And there is no age group, there is no color, no, there's no relation. And this is an unknown enemy. I think we all are responsible. All the guidelines coming every day or every now and then, we have to hear and follow that wherever we go, right from the home to the outside where we mingle with that. But as far as the groups and protesting and all, I think those people need to be educated. I think they're doing out of their mind, ignoring those social distance for gathering in an uncivilized manner. And
Ravi, I got you, and I think it is almost impossible to educate them when they are coming with so much passion. Congresswomen, protesters maintaining social distance is almost something that you cannot even imagine, or that can be a possibility.
Yeah, no, I think we've all seen the tapes of massive crowds that are gathering. I was happy to see that at least most of them look like they were at least wearing masks, which is a good thing. But yeah, certainly this is a concern. You know, if you talk to you listen to any of the leading doctors and experts in this country, like Dr. Fauci or Dr. Birx, they say that face masks and social distancing, they're here to stay for the foreseeable future, because if and when there is a vaccine, it's at least a year away. Regardless of what the administration is saying about how we're going to have one by the end of the year, that's highly unlikely. And then how do you, once you do get the vaccine, how do you disperse it? We're going to need over 7 billion doses if it's a one-shot vaccine. We're going to need over 7 billion doses. How do you prioritize how they're given out? Who's going to pay for it? How expensive is it going to be? So what I try to do is just encourage people to be as careful as possible. If you feel passionately about being out there and being part of this, these peaceful protests, I support that 1,000%. And it's unfortunate that it's coming during the time that we're dealing with the pandemic as well. But just try to take the steps that you can to keep yourself and others safe, and certainly wear a mask and try to stay as far away from people as you can. You know, I think this social unrest and the peaceful protests will actually, you know, at some point turn into something else. And hopefully that's people like me in positions in Washington and certainly in our state governments, doing something from a legislative standpoint to address the inequity that the systemic racial inequity that exists and prejudice that exists in our criminal justice system, as well as, you know, what this pandemic has shown, that there is such inequity in our educational systems and our healthcare systems as well.
So this is a serious matter, and indeed I would look at overall approach collectively is positive, even though there might be someone who sitting at an important position may not at times come up with unifying statements, yet by and large I see the spirit is intact, the spirit that defines this great nation. And considering that as a positive sign at this juncture, Raviji, if we look at the veterans, and Congresswoman has also been a champion for the cause of seniors, I think we find them in some additional vulnerable situation at the moment. Any special focused plan to serve them, to cater to the needs of seniors that you are aware of, Raviji, and then we'll seek Congresswoman's views on that.
I'm not aware of it, but I'm only concerned about this senior people are been affected double side. You know, one is economic side, second one is the service which they were getting, whether in a nursing home or elder care or at home services. So there's a little bit of a concern, and we had to come up with some kind of a plan. And believe Congresswoman can help us how we can strategize in future if something happens like this. How do we separate and take a little bit of extra care for the senior as well as the veterans who have been served our country, not be ignored at this time, because that's my feeling.
Absolutely. So this isolation also kills sometimes, and you're already suffering from various things. You cannot go out. You don't have the normal life available for you. So that is one. And Congresswoman, I want to also look at the positive side of life as per your vision and your leadership. In spite of everything not happening right, there must have been something where you felt that this is the way you saw it should happen, and you could play a role in making it happen that way. So let us talk about that which you consider as a source of a little bit of satisfaction in all this cloudy space.
One of the things that I think this pandemic has highlighted is the unbelievable courage of our first responders, the doctors, the nurses, the janitors in the hospital. Every day while we were all staying home and wearing masks and socially distancing, they were getting up and going to work, and they were exposed to a high degree to this virus, and they went to work anyway. And I think that when I hear from so many young people that they say, I think I'm going to go into nursing, or I think I want to go to medical school, or I think I want to become a fireman or something like that. It brings a smile to my face, because I think, that shows a level of appreciation that we should all have for our first responders who are on the front lines, who didn't get a break, many of whom got sick themselves, many of whom had to isolate themselves away from their families at a time when you want to be with your families. And so I think that they have been particularly heroic, and I've been very proud of the work that we've done in Washington that has been laser-like focused on supporting our healthcare institutions, our hospitals, our healthcare centers, our nursing homes, critically important. There has been an outside impact on the elderly, on people with comorbidities, on veterans. And so if we're going to do anything during this time where there's a little bit of a lull right now, where the numbers are still decreasing and not increasing, we need to plan for the future. Because again, it seems very likely, if history is our guide, that in September, October, it's going to come back in some form. And we have to make sure that our hospitals are fortified. We have to make sure that we can stockpile as much PPEs as possible. And we have to just make sure that we do everything that we can to support our first responders. And again, continue to educate people that, it's not going to be life as we know. We're not going back to life as we know it in phase one, right? Phase one is still not going to be life, normal life as we know it. And it's not going to be normal for some time to come. I mean, there's a good likelihood. I hope this is not true, but there's a likelihood that kids don't go back to school in September. That would be catastrophic, not only for their educational development, but for their social and mental and emotional development as well. To say nothing of the fact that what our parents who have to go back to work going to do about their kids who are home from school. So we have to make sure that we do everything that we can to create a system where kids can go back to school safely, and teachers are safe, and we try to get to back to life as normal.
We all want to go back to the normal side of life, but now there is a new normal waiting for us. And as we move towards the concluding part of our conversation, Raviji, briefly speaking, for the new normal, you got some time to contemplate sitting at home this quarantine period, or just not being able to socialize and all that. So any lesson that you felt was visible to you, again, something that either you might have known or maybe something that you learned during this period, please share.
Thank you. I'll finish this. Then I have one quick question to Congresswoman after my remarks. One was, I'm married 32 years, and the most important thing, we're all chasing, working, doing many things. Same with my wife. She's taking care of the kids. The most important thing, what has happened to me, and most of our friends also, we redefining our life. How do we live? So that's the best part I learned, as well as a patience to deal with the situation. You cannot get upset. Everything you have to manage it in such a way that there is no choice. You are stuck. That's what I think. My question I have for the Congresswoman is about the global entry. As you know, Governor did not provide, and a lot of New Yorkers and people who travel. So I need your help in that. How do we get it resolved when the travel comes back?
Yeah,
So
Congresswoman, take it away. Take it away. Yeah.
So thank you for raising the global entry issue. We were trying to deal with that issue and getting the governor to work together with the administration because of the tens of thousands of people just here in New York that were adversely affected by that. Now, just because it's a pandemic and there is basically no international travel going on right now, that's not a reason to let the global entry issue go by the wayside. And I think that, now that we're getting back to work and we're able to do committee work virtually like this and take votes and stuff like that, we're going to be able to begin to address issues other than the pandemic that are critically important to ensuring that when we do come back, what is the future of work going to look like? What is the future of travel going to look like? Are businesses still going to send people halfway across the world on business trips, right? Are people going to travel far away on trips anymore? So the hope is that, yes, that's going to pick up again, but I think that it's going to be a while before international travel gets back to where it is. But I thank you for raising that issue about the global entry issue. I believe we were close to getting to a resolution there, but then things happen. I will stay focused on that, and I thank you again for bringing that up.
I appreciate that, Congresswoman, and I appreciate Raviji for raising that as well as being with us in this meaningful conversation. And Congresswoman Kathleen Rice, I sincerely appreciate you taking time out as well as leading us and making us feel a part of one unified whole called this great nation, United States of America, with your leadership and concern on various issues and passionately fighting and raising voice. And any message as we say goodbye from this show from you?
I was thinking when you were talking about what your takeaway and what you learned or what you were reminded of, I was reminded during this time of lots of time to contemplate life and read books that have been sitting on my bedside table that I haven't been able to get to. And I was just reminded of the wonderful, beautiful diversity of our great state of New York and how that diversity was on display from day one in dealing with this pandemic and how tough New Yorkers are. And the reason why we're tough is because we have such a diverse community of people all committed to the same thing, right? Making life better for all of us, right? If one of us falls, we have to be there to pick each other up, right? Because as so goes each one of our fellow citizens, so go we all. And so I would just leave us with that. I'd just like to leave you with that thought that for me, this has just reaffirmed how wonderful not just the state of New York is in its diversity, but certainly this country, and it's what makes this country so great. And I want to thank you so much for inviting me here today, and it was wonderful to spend this time with you.
Thank you very much. Congresswoman Kathleen Rice joined us with industrialist as well as the philanthropist Ravi Boplari, your friend. And so on that note of thanks and smiles and a positive outlook towards life as well as confidence that together we can overcome everything. Thanking Congresswoman Kathleen Rice as well as Ravi Boplapurji. This is Ashok Vyas. Thanking all of you for being with us with lots of good wishes.
Thank you so much.